What's up, friends? You are back. It is episode 11 of the MMANonstop.com podcast with Jordan and Brian.
MMANonstop.com, the first place for all your news and notes in the world of MMA. We combine all your news from your favorite sites into one place, so you don't have to go search for it.
And today we've also got an interview with Carlos Condit, the natural-born killer. He's fighting at UFC 132 this weekend against Dong Hyun Kim. We're going to talk to him about everything from the fight to the Welterweight Division to the Nate Marquardt situation.
Keep coming back all weekend for UFC 132 coverage. We'll be live in Las Vegas tweeting and keeping you guys posted on what's going on. On Friday, we'll have our UFC 132 picks, and later this week we'll have the book on Dana White.
MMANonstop.com.
The fight starts here. Welcome to the MMANonstop.com podcast. Today we have the natural-born killer, Carlos Condit, with us, talking about his upcoming fight this Saturday night at UFC 132 in Vegas against Dong Hyun Kim. Carlos, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, man.
Well, good. Well, thanks so much for taking the time. And, let's jump right into this fight with Stun Gun. You know, he's a guy with a reputation of having, a strong chin and grinding out his opponents and wearing them down. What do you think of him as a fighter?
I think that he's a great grappler. His takedowns are pretty top notch. I think he plays it safe. He just takes guys out, like you said. I actually don't think that his chin has really been tested, and I plan on being the one to do that.
Okay.
Yeah, Carlos, this is Brian, and you brought up a good point that all but one of his UFC fights have ended in the decision. And in your fights, you fought 31 times and only 3 have gone to the judges. So imagining you're going to push the pace to end this fight in the earlier rounds, are too many fighters fighting conservatively and just trying to win on points?
I don't know, man. I think that as the sport evolves, guys are just, getting tougher to finish. But I think that there is some conservative game planning going on out there, and I think that it's all. So this is what guys are doing for a living. So a win is a win in their mind.
So I mean, do you think fighting to win and not to lose is the right way to go?
I don't know, man. Not necessarily. I can only speak for myself, and my philosophy is. As long as that guy's still awake and coming at me, then I'm, then I'm not safe. So I try to, put his lights out, submit him, do whatever I can, to finish, to stop the fight.
Well, speaking of one fight, that this is your last fight that you definitely finished, against Dan Hardy. After you knocked out Dan Hardy, you shot up the contenders list. When you're off of that fight with Kim, what was your initial reaction?
There was some discussion as to who I was going to fight, and it's kind of there were some different names thrown out there, BJ Penn, Fitch, but Kim was definitely a name that had been mentioned early on, and I would. I would have rather maybe fought, somebody with a bigger name, just because Kim is not as well known, but he's, super, super tough. But I think it's a good matchup, man, and I'm excited.
So you mentioned some of the top names that are right around where you should be or where you stand. Where do you see yourself in the welterweight division, and what do you think a win this Saturday would do for you in terms of ranking? Does that put you up at number 1 contender status?
Yeah, man, I think it does, especially if I can put on a good showing and finish Kim like I plan to do. I think a good argument could be made for giving me the title shot.
Absolutely. So when is the finish going to come?
I don't know, man. He's a tough dude, but I think in some of his past fights he's kind of faded towards the end of the fight. And I only get stronger as the fight goes on. So I'm thinking later in the fight. But I'm not taking anything for granted. I know that if I'm going to be the first loss on his record, I'm really going to have to work for it.
Absolutely. So we're listening to the natural-born killer Carlos Condit on the MMAnonstop.com podcast. So, Carlos, let's keep going into the welterweight division, and we can't really dive into the division right now without asking your thoughts on the Nate Marquardt situation. Nate said that he half expected to be let go, and seeing as how the UFC had to scrap a main event the day before a live TV show, do you think that firing was justified?
You know, man, I don't know. I think that them having to scrap this fight was a big factor in it. I think it's an unfortunate situation all around, man. Nate's a great guy. He's a teammate of mine. But on the other hand, I don't know, man. I'm against performance enhancing drugs, and I'm against guys basically cheating, man. I've never done it in my life, and I feel that like I said, I feel like it's cheating.
Obviously, you hear other people talk about it. Ben Askren came out yesterday and said that it's happening all over the world of MMA. Obviously without naming any fighters, but how many people are really do you see around are pushing the limits? Kind of with illegal and illegal substances.
I really don't know, man. That's not really my bag. So I pretty much steer clear there. So I would really have no idea.
Okay. Well, let's jump away from Nate Marquardt and talk a little about the rest of the welterweights. The long list of contenders every day. A lot of people, they don't want to fight each other. You and Diego Sanchez has mentioned that he's willing to fight. Former trading partners. You've said that. Why do you think? What's your mentality about why you'd be open to fight? A training partner if it came down to it.
Well, we're in this sport to be the best in the world, and for me, I just look at it as it's just business, man. I could go in there and be friends with a guy beforehand, and go in there, kick each other's asses, and then I think we can be friends afterwards, maybe. But we're in this sport to be on top, not to make friends.
Do you have do you have any kind of relationship with Kim? Have you guys met before? Or?
No, I've never met him.
Okay.
So you talked a little bit about your training camp. You trained with Greg Jackson, Mike Winklejohn, and it seems like that particular training camp is turning into a mecca for fighters. So many guys are looking to take it to the next level and end up deciding to relocate to Albuquerque. So as one of the longtime fighters there, and you've kind of been homegrown in Albuquerque, what makes that camp so special, and what's it been like to see a stable of training partners grow so much?
Well, for one, Greg has been instructing and teaching guys mixed martial arts since before most people even knew about UFC. He's been doing it over 20 years. But I don't know, man. There's kind of Albuquerque is definitely a fight town. Whether it was boxing back in the day and now mixed martial arts. We don't have professional football, professional basketball, but we have pro fighters. That's what Albuquerque does. And the altitude is definitely a factor, and now the fact that we got so many top-notch guys training together, that just takes it to another level.
Have you been fighting with anyone in particular? Who's kind of being the stun gun for you in training most?
We had a couple of Russian wrestlers in, and they had some great wrestling, some great throws, and some really good stand-up actually. And so I was able to pick their brain, learn a lot from them. And then we have a ton of guys that can go southpaw. So I definitely felt like I had good training partners in preparation for the fight.
Great. Now,
as a former WC champion, how does it make you feel when you see these WC guys come in there and win and headlining major UFC events? You have Dominic Cruz and Uriah Faber, both WC guys coming in to head UFC 132. How does it make you feel to see them be successful in the organization?
You know, the two guys you mentioned, I'm huge fans of Uriah and Cruz, man. You know, it's awesome. You know, especially because, you know, there was a lot of talk that, you know, WEC guys wouldn't be able to hang in the UFC, and you know, I think that time and time again we've shown that that's not the case.
Yeah, speaking of mergers, what's your reaction as far as Strikeforce being acquired by Zuffa? What do you feel? What do you feel about that?
You know, I think that it opens the opportunity for some really great matchups, especially in my division. You know, I think that Jake Shields. Well, I guess Jake came over before the merger, but you know. Nick Diaz in particular, you know, I think, you know, that acquisition alone is a great addition to UFC.
So you mentioned a few guys. Is there anybody just definitely not looking past the fight this weekend, but is there anybody in particular that you'd like to fight besides for the title, of course?
Yeah, man. I would like to avenge some of my losses. You know, maybe against Kentman and against Shields, you know, but I've always had my eye on fighting Nick Diaz. You know, I think he's a phenomenal fighter, and he's exciting, and I think we'd have a hell of a fight.
Big time, absolutely. So, Carlos, thanks for your time, man. Before we let you go, how can your fans keep in touch with you online? I'm on Twitter, just at Carlos Condit. You know, I have a website that's kind of under construction, but it's carloscondit.me. And then my Facebook fan page I update pretty regularly. Okay, and any sponsors you want to plug before we let you go?
Head Rush. I have a signature shirt coming out here for UFC 132. You know, it's a pretty nice shirt. Also Venom. You know, they got some pretty nice gear, and Southwest Sports Institute, where I do my strength conditioning and prepare for my fight, Kirky.
Good deal. Well, you can follow him at twitter.com/Carlos Condit, and he's fighting Dong Hyun Kim this Saturday at UFC 132. Carlos, thanks again for taking the time to speak with us today, and best of luck on Saturday. Hopefully we'll be able to talk to you again.
All right, guys. Yeah, no problem.
Thanks a lot, man.
Thanks for joining us today on the MMAnonstop.com podcast.
MMAnonstop.com, the first place for news and notes online. MMAnonstop.com, the fight starts here.